In the latest Rings of Power news, Bounding into Comics has just put out a pretty brilliant take on how Amazon kind of has an out if they wanted to use it in terms of kind of throwing the first season of Rings of Power under the bus and having it be part of the deception that Sauron was pulling and using that as a way to say this is a version of events that could have been, or maybe it was a version of events for somebody's point of view. It basically, I'm gonna read through it, and we can go through it at our leisure together, and enjoy. But basically, it's taking the concept of, one of the things that Tolkien was well known for is his ability to retcon a story and make it as if it was meant to be that way all along, and sort of been like, oh yeah, I'm changing this because I changed my mind over the years, but I'm going to work it into the story as though it was actually meant to be wrong in the first place because it was a mistelling or someone else's version of events. And I went, this is actually a great article. If you haven't read this, I highly recommend that you do. There's going to be a link below to the whole thing in detail. Anyway, I'm going to go through it. If this is your first time here, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can get more as I continue to cover Rings of Power. I don't do a whole lot on this show anymore because it's off the air and there's not a lot of news, but occasionally there is. I'm also doing Mondays in Middle Earth every Monday at 11 a.m. Central as we read through The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion, possibly beyond. And of course, don't forget, we're also doing a series of scripted videos now called Middle Earth Lore. We just did the origin of the dwarves. We're about to do the history of the dwarves and more. So check out all of those things here on YouTube. In the meantime, let's go ahead and dive in. It says j.r.r. Tolkien provides the answer for Prime Video to tell a proper Second Age Lord of the Rings story in the second season of The Rings of Power. Let's skip all this other stuff. It says in the prologue, Tolkien provides a brief retelling of the events of The Hobbit, where Bilbo obtains the One Ring. However, he notes that this retelling is not how Bilbo originally told it to his dwarf companions and Gandalf. He says it's a curious fact that this is not the story as Bilbo first told it to his companions. To them, his account was that Gollum had promised to give him a present if he won the game, but when Gollum went to fetch it from his island, he found the treasure was gone, a magic ring which had been given to him long ago on his birthday. Bilbo guessed that this was the very ring that he had found, and as he had won the game, it was already his by right. But being in a tight place, he said nothing about it and made Gollum show him the way out as a reward instead of a present. Now, this is part of the retcon that happened with The Hobbit later on, as I understand things. So it's really brilliant how he did this. Tolkien then wrote, this account Bilbo set down in his memoirs, and he seems never to have altered it himself, not even after the Council of Elrond. Evidently, it still appeared in the original Red Books, i.e., the original Hobbit, as it did in the copies and abstracts, but many copies contain the true account as an alternative, derived no doubt from notes by Frodo or Samwise, both of whom learned the truth, though they seem to have been unwilling to delete anything actually written by the old Hobbit himself. This is brilliant. I love this. It's so true. Um, Gandalf disbelieved Bilbo's story, was very curious about the ring, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to read all of this. It says here that Prime Video and Amazon Studios could take a page out of Tolkien's prologue and have whoever compiled the first season of The Rings of Power admit to telling a false story while the real and true story is eventually told. Now, getting Payne and McKay to admit that they created a poor telling in the first place is going to be really hard because, according to them, they figured out all the problems way before they started filming season two, and that's what they're already off doing. But it is a very interesting way that they could theoretically, assuming there would be a course correct, because we have heard rumors about them being demoted and about some restructuring, and you can't reboot, but they've been talking about trying to course correct. This could be an interesting way to course correct. They said they could be creative with it and have it be a story that Sauron might have recounted, or maybe even Saruman. They said to really, and this is Bounding into Comics saying this, to have it really hit home how deceitful and thus untrue that the first season is, they could even have it be a history written by Grima Wormtongue. Oh, this is brilliant. Not only should they reveal that the first season is a false telling of history, but they could have someone like Aragorn telling a tale about the Second Age from works written by Gandalf or Elrond after the defeat of Sauron and the scouring of the Shire. He could then be telling the tale to his son and heir, Eldarion, or to one of his daughters. It could even be fitting to have Aragorn or King Elisar tell the tale, given that he is the last chieftain of the Dunedain and a direct descendant to Isildur. It's quite possible that the tales of the fall of Numenor could have been or would have been passed down to him through oral tradition rather than collected by Gandalf or Elrond. Very, very, very interesting. They even talk about how Arwen here, since she was given, it said could have been or would have perhaps gotten her ring of power from her father. He says you could have her act as a brief narrator. They said it's an easy narrative fix that could put the show back on track and regain the goodwill that Prime Video and Amazon Studios spit on. I have a hard time believing that they spit on the legacy. I don't agree with everything. That's why I always take Bounding into Comics with a little grain of salt, because I don't believe that any purposeful insulting went on. I think that the people behind this genuinely thought that they were doing a good job, and then found out that, oh, this isn't getting the reaction that we wanted from people. There also, I saw yesterday on TikTok, there's a great video going around of Brandon Sanderson talking to one of his buddies while they're signing. And the other guy was giving Rings of Power a 7 or 8, and Brandon Sanderson goes, "You gave Rings of Power a 7 or an 8? Ooh!" Like even Brandon Sanderson is like cringe. So it's not. The show was not that great, overall. But I'm not going to say they spit on Tolkien's legacy or anything like that, or that they spit on the fans. Um, but I will say that I think from the perspective of coming back and using Tolkien's own storytelling prowess at retconning things that he decided he wanted to change later on. And he was like, oh, well, I could just make that's a retelling. That was someone's version of events. And that's their version, and it's not incorrect. It's just that's the version that they told. The real version, or the alternative version based upon more information that we had available at the time, is this over here. And so they've given some great alternatives here in the Bounding into Karmics article, about how, you know, it could be Grima, it could be Saruman, it could be Sauron. I think it would probably make the most sense for this to be um, Sauron's retelling, or Sauron's version of events, because they've already said that Sauron is going to be a major part of season 2. So again, it's probably not going to be happen, but it is an interesting theory to think about, and it would give them an out if they actually are trying to course correct, because it's a simple way to do it by just saying, well, yeah, season 1 was a version of events. It's a version believed by some people. It's a retelling by certain parties who may or may not have had all of the information, or may not have been telling a true story, or they may have just had, rumors that they were dealing with, and so they were telling a version based on oral traditions as opposed to something that they had actually experienced for themselves. It's all great in theory. Who knows if any of this is actually true, but it's something worth reading if you enjoy continuing to look at and have Rings of Power in your life in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just for the sheer sake of laughing at things like I do from time to time. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, support with a super chat or a sticker on these premieres. Super thanks after the fact. Join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page, and I'll see everybody in the next episode. Peace.